Great. Okay, so we are recording this meeting for others to be able to see it in the future, other of our colleagues to learn also about what we're all going to learn about today. So I'm going to get things kicked off, folks. Welcome. My name is Chris Brisky. I'm the Chief Data Strategist for the Minnesota Department of Health, currently the Interim Director for the Office of Data Strategy and Interoperability. Within that office, we're a relatively new office in the Minnesota Department of Health. We started about 2018, and we've been steadily growing. We've got two different units. One of the units is the Data Technical Assistance Team. That's led by my colleague Hannah Woods, who's on the call as well. And it's great to see a lot of names that we recognize already from our team going out and participating in your regional data calls and in your infrastructure project, data infrastructure project, community of practice, and in all the places where we get to interact. So the Data Technical Assistance Team, part of our objective, part of our mission is to serve all Minnesota Department of Health data teams, as well as all local public health teams in Minnesota for data technical assistance. And so the way that we do this is hosting things like this. And so we've got, there's several objectives that we have in our data technical assistance team in the Office of Data Strategy and Interoperability at MDH that align with exploring this opportunity. One of them is sharing data resources within the public health system in Minnesota, using maintaining and using a shared library of measures and survey questions. Also helping MDH data teams and local public health identify the most affordable data software solutions. And so we're going to learn more about that, an opportunity about that related to that today. With the team that we're coming in. Also, just want to mention a couple other things. There will be, more organization that happens after this, so more opportunities. We'll get likely a monthly meeting going in Minnesota to keep organizing, and so continue to spread the word if you're interested in what you see here today, and work with your, purchasing teams and folks you need to work with back in your departments, if you want to continue to pursue membership in the Academy of Science. And there'll be, like we're recording this, and so we'll have other opportunities. We are going to look into it as well on the MDH side. We're very interested in having a survey library within the health department for folks to share questions and questions that are well curated already, instead of having to reinvent the wheel so much as we do new surveys. And I just learned this morning that it's National Library Week. So what a perfect week for us to have this in Minnesota, as we're going to talk about a library of survey questions and librarians that look after those across the states. So I've talked enough. I'm going to turn it over to Jake Holdaway. Jake is a dynamic organizer and leader for the Academy of Science, and he also has a strong background in government procurement, helping all of us get the best deals on all the things we buy, including data software. So welcome, Jake, in the Academy of Science, and we look forward to your presentation.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, for having me. I really appreciate it. You should be seeing my screen broadcast here in just a second. We have somebody that's not muted, but that's okay. I just want to make sure they know. Let's go ahead and get started, guys. And first, I want to thank Chris for over the past couple months organizing and getting in place. I would say that Minnesota is very lucky that the state would put together such an office. It's not common. I think we have 4 other states in the country that has that state health departments have set up offices like that to serve local health departments. And then also I want to thank the 15 to 20 local health departments over the past 4 years that have engaged our organization, either through just sending us, attending NACHO meetings and understanding the small work group in nature where it started. I looked through the list and was like, some of you guys know that this effort has started nationally. And then obviously, as you've called in or said, hey, can we start this group in your state? As we focused in on other states, we weren't able to create a Minnesota AOS chapter or group library. We usually try to wait until there's enough of a flexion point or a desire to start within a group within the state. We were starting to get to those numbers, but I've heavily been focused in on the state of Michigan and onboarding them, and the state of Wisconsin local health departments, and the state of Illinois, that it continued to get to a boiling point. And then Chris reached out to us and helped him understand their new role in the new office. And at which point we just said, you know what, I think we're ready. And we went and engaged the national board and said, hey, there's actually quite a bit of desire within the state of Minnesota to start a group. And so today's meeting, and I know you guys attend a lot of Zoom meetings, is actually quite new. You probably hear that a lot, but we're going to be talking about a lot of new technology concepts that maybe people have never seen before, or new technology relationship. It might be similar to the first time everybody saw Facebook and how do they work together? Going from a blog world or a website world or a MySpace world, going into Facebook, how do they work together? And I think that's what a lot of people take away from AOS is they go, I did not know that 450 health departments work together. And to be honest with you, if we were a more funded, got more grant funded, we would grow faster. And so there's reasons why we can't do that. So I'm going to go through to set the agenda for today. I'm going to talk about the national problem, why about sharing data, and also the national relationship that we have across local health departments and how we can't share data. And then I'm going to talk about why the association was formed to tackle that problem and how to improve that relationship with data and with technology. And so this is a little bit difficult. I'm going to be honest with you, it's a little bit difficult to understand what the Academy of Science does. So let's jump into it. And I'm going to give you a 40,000 foot view. Now take off your I work for the state health department hat and I work for the local health department hat, and try and focus on I'm just a citizen, or I'm looking at this nationally. Across this nation, we have 3,585 local health departments that are independent, sovereign local health departments, meaning you guys own your data. You're sovereign over your data. You don't share it with each other. And also, you own your measurements. Many of you guys are members of NACHO, the National Association of City County Health Officials. And if you're a health director, you get to attend in many years the national conference to do so. And there's also state chapters. In speaking with Carrie and going back and forth, being the SACHO or state association, you get together to discuss the various problems that face local health departments. And we could go through and list all of those, COVID, tobacco, vaping. And in many of those health problems, when we come together at our state chapters or at the national chapter and discuss those problems, there comes a corresponding measurement or survey. The word I'm going to use, I might use the word form, survey, assessment, evaluation. All of those to us mean primary data collection efforts. You guys are collecting data in some sort of form. And when after going to those state conferences or national conferences, our relationship has been up to this point that everyone go home and purchase some sort of form builder or survey software, basically, in essence, hiding our nation's measurements in some random login. And that's where the problem has started. All of these softwares are written in a different code. They do not communicate. So if we create a survey in Qualtrics or Question or SurveyMonkey, they do not communicate with each other, and we cannot trade them like baseball cards. They're a unique file. And that causes a massive problem. So number one, we can't trade like baseball cards. Number two, there is no state level library. And in many cases, our data collection person does not have a list of who are all the data collection people throughout the state of Minnesota. We know this as engaging you guys, right? The health directors get to know each other and they go to the conferences and have many more coordinated meetings. But the data collection individuals have not had an association for that. And so nobody can see all of the state measurements, and the state health department also has no clue or has access to the template measurements. They're hidden across 100 and so whatever in Minnesota health departments. And so I don't want this to sound anti-capitalist, but this business model is helping all of the data collection entities. They get to sell 3,500 instances of this software, and they help us to hide all of these measurements, and it's hard for us. And also, looking at it from a philosophical standpoint, if a citizen throughout Minnesota were to move from one local health department jurisdiction to another, literally the measurement of that health problem is measured differently in many cases. It's a different form, it's a different assessment. And we always step back and say, is that good for the science or for the protection of how that problem is measured? And so that's kind of the problem that the Academy of Science, it was formed by 50 local health departments at a NACCHO work group, not officially under NACCHO. And we're very grateful for the various local health departments that come and said, we do not have a great relationship with data. Under the direction of those 50, we looked at our values in terms of how we could overcome this problem. And so the 3 goals and phases of the LHD Academy of Science is to, number 1, create a public library. Why has the world been designed to hide these measurements? If you guys are all government entities, why are we buying our own individual software and then hiding them behind some login instead of making them public and making them free and accessible to all other local health departments, to the state association, or to NACCHO, or to the CDC and the state health department, so that they know what is the template of how you're measuring that particular problem. So we all don't have to recreate the wheel. So the 3 goals and phases of the association are, number 1, have the association purchase for and on behalf of all of our members. When we started as a humble group of 50 health departments, that was a little bit harder, right? And coming in and buying in bulk would identify one code. Now, I want to be very clear, and for those that don't have a procurement background, meaning we needed to go out to RFP, a request for proposal. We needed to find, so a buying committee was organized over close to 5 years ago now, in looking at all of the various softwares and saying, look, we do not want 3,500 instances. What is the software that we could use? Having one person from every state represented, we did a RFP to be able to reduce those costs. Now, I want to be very clear. There is no endorsement or engagement of any of these softwares, of the software that we selected. When the buying committee comes together, we put it out on the street and say, who should hold our nation's measurements? And can we get a better price? The values of how that was purchased, we can go into the details. One person from every state coming together in that initial 50 group. The buying committee results, and I'm showing them to you, the 3 finalists were SurveyMonkey. They put forth, and I don't want to get too into the weeds here, but there's low grade versions of software, and there's higher grade, like enterprise grades of software. Looking at the nation as a whole, we needed to look at the average makeup of what a local health department. So I know there's certain people in this room that have a massive budget that can afford the Rolls Royce of softwares. And I know there's a very large number of you that come from the have-nots that do not have the ability to procure, something over even $1,000 is not obtainable to you. And so looking at that, The have-nots are about 80% of our nation. Okay. The 20% are the haves, the larger health departments that can afford these massive spend. And so looking at that and trying to serve the nation, we went into it with a budget, or I shouldn't say we, the buying committee went into it looking at what code or software we should do. After the first year, we were with a different software called Qualtrics. We built the platform on there. However, the price was much more than what we wanted. And the buying committee decided to go out to RFP 4 years ago, and we put it out. And at that point, Alchemer was selected. Alchemer was $1,800 at that time for their enterprise HIPAA compliant version, and SurveyMonkey was $2,000. However, because at that time we had grown from 50 to 100 health departments, and the buying committee committed to buying over 300 instances, we were able to get the price down from $1,800 to $1,000, saving every local health department $800 annually. So buying power worked. And we brought in a specialist, Marquita Gillespie from the National Institute of Government Procurement, who trains your procurement directors and helped with the buying committee to make the selection of the software. Having done that for 3 years, this July, Alchemer was up for renewal of that contract. The buying committee was reorganized, selected by one person from every state again. At this time, we were 450 health departments, which was much larger. We had met our commitment. And the buying committee, again, after looking at all softwares, decided to not only renew, but extend the contract for an additional 3 years as we grow. I will tell you, it is hard with the growth of AOS as we grow from state to state. The buying committee did a great job. But I want to make sure that Alchemer just happens to be the platform that competed vigorously for the contract. We need to make sure that we are here to represent our members' needs, and where do we put the National Library of Measurements, because you're going to see the library here in just a second. Now, the slides that I show you is what we present back to the state health department. We really want them to understand the difficulty that you guys are in. And a lot of times, to be honest with you, Chris didn't know. We had to bring this to the state health department and say, do you realize that the CDC, NACCHO, the state association, the university have never, there's not a public library. Do you know that in our nation, we hide our measurements in 3,500 instances? And in most cases, like Chris, did not know that relationship. And so we present those back and say, is there any way we could go after state grants to even further reduce the cost for data collection? I know that many of you in this room, probably around 30%, if it's similar to other states, cannot afford a HIPAA compliant data collection platform, meaning that many of you are using a free version like Google or Microsoft Forms, in which they are taking that private data and selling it. And you're doing it with the best of intentions. However, you're limited on funds, and so all you can do is use some free version. It's not free. They're mining that data and selling it to various pharmaceutical companies, and that's why obviously HIPAA compliance has been a requirement. But lo and behold, you haven't been able to fund that. And so we, in every state, I'm very proud of this, we put forth our procurement of our buying committee and show them the buying power of buying as a group. And we look for ways in which we can get grants. And I'm happy to say that in 9 states, the Academy of Science has been able to approach someone like Chris at the state health department and look for grants to pay for the other half of that license. So the Academy of Science is free in the state of Michigan, every local health department. It's free in the state of Wisconsin, the login, the software, the monthly meetings, the library. It's free in the state of Kansas and Kentucky. Now, that was a very big political win, right? in changing the relationship that you guys had with technology. And I don't want this to sound anti-capitalist, but there is a desire for us to buy hundreds of instances of software and hide them from each other. Now, the second goal of and then the third thing is engaging the CDC for grants. And I'm happy to say not only state grants, but CDC grants. Me and my staff are funded by CDC grants. The 3 national librarians, so that no state or local health department has to cover those costs. And so it's been a huge undertaking politically to get those wins. The second goal is to simplify. Now, I know many of you that are collecting data as we've met over the past 3 months have laughed at this, right? That we have all created our measurements in some random login, and we have never said, maybe I should place this measure. Maybe somebody else is doing that exact survey, that exact accreditation, that exact community health assessment, and maybe I should put it in a common place. But we haven't. It's in some random login somewhere that nobody has access to. And so bringing together an AOS or an Academy of Science group to say, can we make this measurement public? So if I create a measurement and we can agree on, hey, we're using this software, and again, could be SurveyMonkey, could be Qualtrics, could be Alchemer, can we as a group decide what code we would use? And then can we place that measurement in a common library for no monetization, for free? So that the next local health department that is going through accreditation or that is going to create the community health assessment can browse through those templates and take the file and go. And so that they don't need to recreate the wheel. And that takes political power, right? And it also takes a therapy session, to be honest with you, of why are we not working together? Why are we being told to buy all of this software and hide it? Why can't we just get into the same room and agree and make the world a little bit better of a place to think about others outside of our health department, and also making it public for the state health department to play a better role? So I'm going to show you the public library today, and all the measurements there. The next thing, the third and final goal of the Academy of Science is to unify our nation's measurements, to make them public. In every one of our 21 AOS states, we hold a coordinating AOS monthly meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to make public any measurement, any survey, any assessment that was created during that month, and to make every local health department and the state health department that wants to play a role, or any university or any nonprofit that says, hey, I believe in the values of what this protecting the science is. They are members. We have a lot of members that have come from nonprofits or the state that support this effort. And in that coordinating meeting, elected membership is set forth. So the Academy of Science, we're similar to a state association, except for we're only a library. That's it. We're not going to have annual conferences. We're not going to be getting into what Carrie does or anything like that. We're just a public library of measurement, but we unify under leadership there. So let me back up and show you what we mean by this, because these are our 3 goals of what we're trying to accomplish. So first off, our buying committee, and again, I want to reiterate, we are not Alchemer. I buy the association, Faith and Jolie, we buy, and all of our members buy 450 instances of the Alchemer software on behalf of all the states and all of the local health departments that have joined the AOS movement. When somebody joins the Academy of Science, we create them in a team within the software, meaning you do not have access to any of the other 450 health departments' data or live surveys. They are sovereign local health departments. Same with the state. When the states join AOS, and we have many states that do support their AOS groups, They do not get access to your local health department data either. And the Academy of Science, we do not access your data, and we do not have access to your live measurements either. And so you can go through and look at the 450 health departments. I'm not going to scroll through the pages and pages, but we're very grateful for the results of working together throughout this nation. And so anyway, we create you as that. Now, I serve as the national librarian for the Academy of Science. When a group is formed, this group, the Minnesota group, as we form in the next month, we will be selecting someone to be the Academy of Science board member for the state of Minnesota. We will be selecting a deputy board member, and we will be selecting a state level librarian. That might not be done in the first month, but in the next month or two, we will be having people volunteer to say, hey, I'm actually interested in buying the software and being on the buying committee, or I'm actually interested in being the librarian, I'm the state health department, or I'm a university, and we will vote on that. We'll also, sometimes we take suggestions from the state association, or sometimes our members just vote it. It's different in every state. However, when we vote someone to be the state level librarian, let me back up as well. Sometimes as a group, we vote that the state health department can be a data reporter or a data aggregator. There are instances in which the state looks at this and says, can we add our library of forms into the AOS library so that they are ready to go? The form, the report, everything, so that you guys just have it, so that the state creates the form, Chris would create it, and he would place it into your account, and the form is done and the report is done. And that's a decision that the group would make, and many states do that. And so there's a few different roles. Now, I serve as the national level librarian. So I want to show you, give you a live look at this. As a national level librarian, I can see all of the 2,100 measurements that are in the National Library up to this point and that are ready. You can see from Michigan, we're doing mandatory reporting on communicable diseases, or we're coming in and we're seeing Metro employee paternal leave measurements, or stigma training measurements, or whatnot. And you can see from what state across the nation they are coming from. Now, my staff, Faith and Jolie, we set up meetings for our members to call and say, hey, I'm looking for a particular measurement like breastfeeding. And we can query the database and look through it and say, okay, who has done a breastfeeding or a vaping measurement or a COVID measurement? And we can look at what state, and we can simply come over here to the right-hand side and we can copy it, and we can place it into not the data, not the live measurement, just a template measurement and the report into that member's account so that they don't need to recreate it for the first time ever. Also, during our monthly meeting, this gives us an opportunity to identify great measurements and add it to the state template library. And we can also say, is this a nature library? Where did this measurement come from? Is this Burfus? Is this, where is this measurement? And we can organize it so that when somebody calls, or in the monthly meeting, we can get them that template measurement, if that makes sense. Now, backing up, even though you guys are a part of the Academy of Science, you can use Alchemer, SurveyMonkey, just like you want. So if you want to go in and just create a survey from blank and go in and run a test, you can still go through and do that. Build the survey, from scratch, do your own primary data collection, build it, style it, add your logo, test it, share it. And I will tell you, and I don't want to get off too much on tangent, focusing in on the technology. I will tell you, I feel like the buying committee did a fantastic job. Obviously, when you have 300 health departments' eyes looking at a particular software, you get a lot of ideas, and the buying committee gets really smart as to every single button in the software. But some of the things that we found our rural health departments needed that they did not have access to prior was they did not have the ability to send SMS text messaging. Those were usually in really large, expensive softwares that they couldn't afford, or they couldn't embed the form onto their website, or do a QR code, or collect data offline. And so there were a lot of technology things that our locals just needed added. Also dashboarding, being able to create dashboards and have an AI that can automatically just create a report. And then also some of our medium to large agencies needed the ability to integrate their own personal account into like a Tableau or Power BI. And I don't want to get into the weeds too much on this, but this also allows the state, when they create a public library, to say, hey, we want to aggregate this particular data set at the state level. If you want to use this form, is there any way? That way we can give you benchmarks and we can give you data to be able to go through and do that. So we know we needed to go through and do that. So the last thing is, and I just started to talk to you about the template library. Now there's two libraries. When we call it a template library, we call it a complete work, like a community health assessment. It's a whole question, comes with everything that you would need. Now, the second library is what we call a question library, meaning that when we are developing a report, a form, and we want to pull just race or ethnicity or income or education level, right? And we want to agree the way in which that word is that question is specifically worded while we're building the survey. And I don't want to confuse too many people with their eyes. Instead of going and creating a new question type, we can come over here and grab a library item, and we can go to the nation's library, because every state works together. We can go into Ohio or Kansas, or even jump into our NACCHO library. And we can come in and say, you know what, I saw in Kansas, they do a community health assessment, and I want to pull in the exact way in which they do their demographic questions. And I can just quickly pull in and steal those exact worded questions so they align. And that happens a lot during our Minnesota AOS group monthly meeting, when we're holding a debate and saying, hey, I found, each group starts a little bit different. Over the 4 years, we started as community health assessments or accreditation. COVID hit, and almost every AOS group shifted to being COVID data. Our groups were focused in on the intake form, or how do we measure this problem, or school measurements of COVID. Now that COVID has slowly ended, let's hope and pray, we've now changed it. And so as we find a particular measurement, sometimes we're adding it to a template library like the complete work, or sometimes we're adding it to the question level library so that it's very easy. Now, members can easily submit these questions to the library as well. And so as Chris says, hey, as a state, we're interested in being the librarian. Or whoever in the state as a group says, hey, we would like to be the librarian. When we turn those functions on, members can submit their questions to the librarian, meaning while they're building it out, they can say, hey, what is your age? This is what I like. They can come over here and they can click on save question to library, and they could say, I'm just going to call it Jake's favorite question. They could then add it to the right library, Corona, Arizona, what we would obviously have Minnesota here listed. I'm just going to put it in the coronavirus library just for the demo, and click on save. Now, our members wouldn't see this, but our librarian permissions will allow this to go over to the Research Global Library of Questions, and Chris and his group would be able to come into the coronavirus library and be able to see that, oh, somebody, and it'll notify them, there has been a library submitted or question submitted to the library, and he would be able to click on it and evaluate it, reword it, put it in the right place, or just delete it, saying, oh, this is a duplicate. And that way we can maintain, as a group of local health department data collectors in Minnesota, we can maintain a library that is available to them. And also, this allows an open forum where Chris, once a month, would be meeting in our meeting, hosted by, and we would decide who hosts that meeting, and I want to break that down. In more than half of our AOS group meetings, I no longer, or Faith or Jolie, no longer host the monthly meeting. The state health department has come in and said, we have an office that will do this. we're going to be conducting the meeting, and I become a note taker, or Faith does, as we organize this. And we've bettered the relationship between the state health department and with locals, and also across the nation, meaning you guys will get access to the other 21 AOS state groups. As we move to make this public, you have access to all their measurements, and we can work together. And again, this is not an endorsement in Alchemer. We could have done this on the Qualtrics platform. We could have done this on RedCap or SurveyMonkey. It was just decided as through a long deliberative process of trying to save money and actually trying to make this free, that could have been there. So that's the software. So the first thing, so you say, what is AOS membership? Because I want to be very clear. Our members do not buy a software. The Academy of Science buys the software for and on behalf of all of our 450 members. Membership includes us buying the software that the buying committee goes through and purchases. Number two, it's the organization of the library. Just like your local city library, all of our measurements are free, like all of the books in the library are free. We organize them for the public good, for the state and for any other local health department. And that's a little bit different. We have not been collecting data for the public good in our belief. And I'm going to go through those values here in just a second. Just making them accessible. And then the third and final part of the membership is holding the monthly meetings. So the Academy of Science hosts 21 state monthly meetings, and it's organizing the entire directory. So for example, I mentioned the state of Kentucky.
Yes, dog. Yes, dog. I see you.
Sorry
I see
about
you.
that. It's not mute. Carol, I love your dog. Sorry, you're not muted. I just want to make sure you knew that. But I want to see a picture of the dog later. So anyway, when somebody joins, we organize the nation's measurements, but also the membership list. So I mentioned that there's many states where it's 100% participation, Kansas and Kentucky and Michigan, and I can go through those lists later. But there has never been a directory of who the data collection person is in this nation. There's always been who's the health director, which is important, obviously, leading the organization. But there has never been who is the data collection person. So keeping who the AOS member is, what is their title, email, phone number, and so that when we find a measurement in the library, we're able to go through and do that. And so now the next thing, and I'm not going to go through everyone's public library and all of that today, but we can in future meetings. Michigan, I'm just going to show and open up all of them there. This is where we kind of keep not only the AOS membership, but we also will make public what measurements the group is making in the particular month. So we do this exercise quarterly, like I'm working on my CHA, I'm working on this, I'm working on performance management, so that we know who each other's working, and we can say, oh, I'm just going to steal that measurement from this person. This is where we trade like baseball cards in our monthly meeting, right? Making them accessible to everyone. We then also do the recorded trainings. I mentioned earlier the CDC funding. Actually, this is through NACCHO funding. AOS Kentucky submitted a grant to get all of our trainings for free. So right now we're going through a five-step training of Alchemer. We do this annually. There is no cost to doing that. That is done by a CDC grant. So all of our AOS members every year have the opportunity to go through Alchemer training at no cost. So we record those meetings and we make them available for all AOS members. Okay, so let me end. We're about 15 minutes in. I'm gonna spend 5 minutes just going through housekeeping of the association. I mentioned earlier that one person from every AOS state is selected to sit on the AOS board. Now, Chris Aldridge from NACCHO still sits on the AOS board, has so from its inception, and we're very grateful. But AOS is not controlled by NACCHO. It's just it's an independent association, and we are grateful for their support. And many of you guys found us through NACCHO when the state of Kansas group presented there. But you can go to the website and you can see who are all of the AOS board members that were elected or selected by their state association or the state health department is a governing entity and they made the selection as to who the leadership was. And these are the individuals that made the decision on what software to use. And so I always defer that. Like, it is kind of difficult when as an association, we don't, running an association, we don't make the decision as to what software was used. That you guys and someone from the state of Minnesota would be selected. Now, we also have one person from the CDC that also sits on the board, but both NACCHO and the CDC do not care and aren't in the buying committee of what software is selected. And so you can go through and do that. Now, I want to get into the values and then we'll end. This is something new. Many of you guys knew about this for the past couple of years, and we just kind of pushed off and said, hey, we haven't created a Minnesota group yet. I want to go through our values. Between here and next month, we're going to be reaching out to, Chris will be and I will be, and kind of going through who would like to be a part of the AOS group. Usually there are a lot of data collection people that know about this problem. There's some people that their health department or health director did not know that this was happening, and that's okay. We need to help our health directors understand that there's not a state level library, or that there's not a national library, that and go through the values with them. And so I'm going to go through those with you briefly, and then we'll turn it, and then we'll end. First off, measurement transparency. Prior to the Academy of Science organizing, all of our members were hiding our measurements in some random login, and we felt that that wasn't for the public good. And so we believe that our AOS members should be committed to sharing and making our measurements transparent and shareable to all other AOS members across the nation in a common file format. That does not say Alchemer, that does not say Qualtrics or RedCap. It just means that we should come together as an organization and find one to be able to work together. Number two, we believe that the public library, the AOS board and our members should be committed to strengthening the state health department, but also carry at the state association and any other national organization like ASTO or CSTE. The reason being is that we look for ways in which the AOS measurement library can strengthen their work. This is a free library, and it should support their organizations. We understand that those organizations, like what Carrie does, the state association or NACCHO, are going to be the advocacy arm. They're going to be all we are is a public library. So if they come together and say, hey, there's this measurement, we can say, look, we found 5 or 6, let's give it to them. This will help them, and it'll strengthen all of us by making it a free public library. Next, technology independent. AOS members, we should be committed to using the best of technology for data collection. However, we need to safeguard ourselves against practices that would silo our collective and scientific work. Meaning, even if we bought Alchemer and we all went out and bought 3,500 instances, that would be siloing it, and we would never have a state level or national library. And so, there's a lot of technologies that do not like that this has happened. And I want to make sure this is not anti-cap technology. This is pro-science. And this is pro-public measurements instead of treating them as private measurements. And so being technology independent, meaning Alchemer does not own the library, none of the technologies would, and that those templates would be free for any of our members to share if they so will. Now, a lot of questions come up. Do I have to share? No. If you have a measurement that you would like not shared in the public library, we can definitely mark it. But as a default, almost every member wants to share, which is kind of cool. The next is a steward of measurement. We understand that we are only stewards, not owners of these measurements, and we must pass them down better than we received them. What we mean by that is all of us are taxpayer funded, right? Whether that be from the local or state. In many cases, some of our funding is coming from various grants. So why we as personal employees don't own these measurements, why wouldn't we put them in a public location and be stewards? And also look at it from a citizen standpoint. Wouldn't our citizens want us to put them in a public location and try to find a common scientific way in which we measure this, instead of creating 3,500 instances of that. Like that's just being a better steward. Now, we do need to recognize data ownership and sovereignty, meaning AOS members will always protect data ownership and their rights to data sovereignty, meaning just because you join the Academy of Science, we cannot access your data. If you want to share, you can share, and it happens a lot, but you're the authoritative figure, the local health department is. If you want to share with Chris at the state, great, and that happens a lot. If Chris wants to share with you, great, but the Academy of Science is not involved. Data ownership and sovereignty remains at that level. At the Academy of Science, we need to improve scientific debate and disagreement. We know that in Minnesota, there has not been a monthly coordinating meeting for data collection people to do a peer review or to present this measurement or this survey to your peers at other health departments and say, hey, what do you think about this? In many cases, especially during COVID, we were creating our measurements in our logins and just running with it the best that we could. Measurement simplicity. We believe that many people that struggle with health come from a lower socioeconomical status and have a hard time understanding health data. So as authors and members of AOS, can we commit to each other to trying to make our measurements understandable and easy for a lay citizen or even a county commissioner or a legislature? And this also goes hand in hand with measurement duplication. Throughout COVID, and it was awesome to be launched in many AOS states during COVID, we found that measurements were duplicated and citizens didn't follow to be vaccinated or didn't want to do things because many times they went to a different jurisdiction and found competing measurements. And that measurement duplication hurt all of us as a science across locals and across. So as we meet in our monthly meeting, can we try and reduce the overall amount of measurement duplicate? Like, why are we doing this so many times? And I know many of you guys that I've met with are just like, yeah, I do not know why we're not making this in a public library, right? Measurement acceptance and adoption. This has to do with looking through the public library before creating a new one. See what other peers across the state have done, and maybe you could just take the template and go instead of creating another competing measurement. Like, try to accept or adopt what might have already been done. This is one of our core values. Many of you listening to the meeting today have no funds. You have never purchased a survey software and $1,000, even for membership, even if it being reduced and having half of it covered by buying in bulk is out of the picture for you. And we understand that. By forming a Minnesota AOS group and showing a culture of sharing. Right now, we do not have a culture, and not to say this in the nicest way, all of our measurements are in random logins, right? And we can't see it. By coming together and making our measurements public, it really shows the state, it shows grant funders to say, wait a second, this is something new. This is a public library where this is available, like Wikipedia, this is free. And when we're able to form, it takes about 6 to 12 months. The national board looks for CDC grants and state level grants, and we keep a list of that 30% of you and we try and find grants to make it so we cover the membership costs for you. And we believe that AOS members, we should strive to unify local health department community by welcoming all local health departments to participate. It doesn't matter your ability to pay. So if you're here and you say, hey, I would really like to participate, we will keep a grant list. And it does take a little time, but we're not going to leave you behind. And the last two, procurement excellence. Everybody wants to be the vendor for the Academy of Science. I mean, obviously, guys, being SurveyMonkey and RedCap and Qualtrics, all of them knock down our door and say, hey, how can we be the provided vendor, especially as we've gone through this growth spurt from 300 to 450, and at the end of the year, we'll be around 800, right? Every group selects one person to be on that buying committee. And we follow the guidelines set forth by the National Institute of Government Procurement, which is the association that your procurement director goes to, the conference that they go to and that they're certified in. As we dole out that contract, a lot of thought goes into what price can we get, what features can we get, How can we make sure that, we don't leave any local health department? And so we need to follow procurement excellence in that buying committee. And that's one thing I want to be very clear about. A lot of people look at it and say, wow, I get an Alchemer login at a reduced. That's true, but we're not Alchemer. We happen to be that's the vendor right now. And then the last two things, united, we succeed. AOS members, we understand that we are only going to be successful in public health if we in the future can speak a common measurement language, meaning we have been counting 3,500 unique ways for measuring the exact same problem. How long are we going to do that? And is that good for this nation? Can we step by step? And then a lot of you guys might think this is such a big goal, this will never be obtained. It actually moves very quickly, month by month, and changing our values from we're individual health departments and we create our own systems and buy this, instead of saying, look, we work for the public good. We might wear different logos, but I will share my measurement and we'll think this through and debate these measurements, and making it public has made the world a better place, right? And then lastly, change agents. We're committed to confronting our biases and operationalizing our values. We realize intention alone is not sufficient. We strive to constantly challenge ourselves to deconstruct frameworks or measurement practices that sustain oppression, meaning I'm a white male in the United States. Sometimes I might count differently than somebody else. And when we create our measurements, we need to check ourselves and say, is this the right way in which we should be measuring? And I'm not saying that I would measure wrong, but I need to take those into account. And by putting our measurements and really thinking it through, we might need to change and improve there. So with that said, we have 5 minutes. I want to turn it back over to Chris. I see that we have a massive chat. Are there questions that have come in so far, Chris?
Yeah, there's a lot of great questions. And I think in the interest of time, I'm going to save the chat.
Okay.
And Jake will work after this meeting to get answers to everyone. And I'll commit to no matter who asks the question, we'll get the answer back to everyone.
Okay.
And that'll be a role for us between the next meeting, now and the next meeting. And then we will start setting up monthly meetings for anyone that wants to continue to participate in forming, where we'll have other opportunity to ask more questions and learn more. And then, of course, everyone here again is welcome to any of those future meetings. And sort of a yes, and you're also welcome, and we'll work on this in the MDH side too, of figuring out who you want to send, from your jurisdiction to each of the monthly meetings. And I don't know if there's any guidance on that, Jake, but I invited a lot of folks from MDH here to make sure we were all on the same page and seeing it together here. And so certainly Hannah's team and myself will participate for the state health department, and then we'll see who's interested and who keeps showing up. Also, if you didn't get a question in the chat, feel free to email me. And we'll get answers to your questions. Let me drop my email as well in the chat. Otherwise, very much appreciate your time, Jake, today. Thanks for coming and showing us, your history and this really exciting opportunity. And thank you all to all of our colleagues in Minnesota across the public health system and in MDH for showing up today as well. Great questions, seeing some really positive feedback already. And so we're really interested in where this goes. And so with that, any closing remarks, Jake?
I will be sending out the monthly meeting invite. That does not mean you're a member of the group. It just means that you are going to be in the next monthly meeting. I would leave it upon every member or everyone that attended today to evaluate your own local health department's data collection effort. And if this is something that you would like to do as a group, please email me between here and next month's meeting so we can go through it. You might need a follow-up demo to see exactly what you saw today, or you could just send them this recording. This is a process. This takes quite a long time to kind of go through. And the other thing is we need to find the brightest minds within Minnesota local public health. In many cases, we're siloed and we don't know each other. And forming the leadership group is going to be very important. There's different issues, and we know that, like the relationship that you have amongst each other, we want to talk about that. The relationship that you have between you and the state. What I really like about Chris is this is the state coming forward and saying, how can we better that relationship and how can we define that? The relationship that has happened over the past 40 years, Chris wasn't here for the past 40 years, right? And you probably weren't there. And in many cases, this world was designed without us even being involved. And so I think that's one thing that people look at the Academy of Sciences, they go, this is a gut check to say, oh, this would be a better world forward, and that would improve our relationship here or there. So, but yeah, there's a lot of challenges and issues, but what's really cool is to see, and in future meetings, we'll bring other state groups to kind of show them what they did. So awesome. Yeah, I'm ready to move forward, and I'll send out a monthly meeting invite to all those that are there. If you don't want to participate, we understand. Some people like to collect data by themselves, and do their own thing, and we're not going to be offended in any way, but we do know that all the emails, there's been a massive desire to start the group. So
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. And thank you again, Jake, and to you and your team. And we'll end the meeting right on time. Thanks everyone.
guys.
Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
bye.
Thank you.